And good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel. It's me, Heidi, as always. Tonight, due to technical difficulties, there is no Twitch stream tonight. Tonight will be just Facebook and YouTube. YouTube, of course, being my primary target. Now, as for the first episode of Friday Facts, I have picked gender dysphoria and ASD, also known as autism spectrum disorder. I have two studies, or rather, one being a study and one being a review. The bigger one is titled Elevated Rates of Autism, including with other neurodevelopmental and psychiatric diagnoses and autistic traits in transgender and gender diverse individuals. This particular study, or an article rather, has been published in Nature Communications. This is biggest to date sort of study on this subject. And if you excuse me for a tiny moment. There we go. A little bit of background. Now, this study covers 641,860 individuals who had completed studies with information of gender, neurodevelopmental and psychiatric diagnoses, including autism and the traits related to autism. In this article, these researchers show a very clear connection with autism spectrum as well as gender diversity. And in this, first, before I go any further, I would like to define terms. Autism spectrum disorder is generally defined by American Psychiatric Association and DSM-5 as follows. Group of neurodevelopmental conditions characterized by early emerging difficulties in social communication, unusually repetitive behavior, narrow interests, and atypical sensory sensitivity. And first, clinical descriptions of this spectrum disorder came from Hans Asperger, after whom the Asperger syndrome was named. Asperger syndrome is a syndrome on the autism spectrum. And another description was also from the 40s by Leo Kanner from 1943. Leo Kanner has given his name to Kanner autists, which is sometimes called childhood autism. And gender dysphoria is defined as follows: a condition in which the mismatch between gender identity and the sex assigned at birth causes significant distress. Now, according from what I got in this study, or rather the article of the study, they found that um, people on the autism spectrum are 3 to 6 times more likely to experience gender dysphoria, which is quite a significant number. Now, these are from Cambridge University, many of them, and as well as one from a Taiwanese university. One of these researchers who in fact went and wrote this article and did the study. Now, what this and this came from this Warrior et al. Article this is from 2020, and this is available publicly online, and I've linked the links in the description box down below. And gender diverse people are reversely more likely to report autism and suspect undiagnosed autism. And based on this article, as well as the other article, the review that can be found, there's a PDF file also available on this. These also went through also different comorbidities, such as different psychiatric diagnoses which tend to co-occur with autism spectrum, such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, ADHD, and OCD. Also, these studies with 640 plus thousand study subjects, it's biggest to date, and these Warrior and his colleagues, or their colleagues, have done an excellent job. Now, this results they ended up with came from 5 unrelated databases, which all include, as I said, about autism, mental health, and gender identity, as well as both gender identity as well as the sex they were assigned at birth. Now, all these findings across the board from all these studies, as well as the other studies and articles Warrior and others refer to in their article, show very similar studies results. And autistic, it's curious, and Simon Baron-Cohen, who is a professor of developmental psychopathology at Cambridge University in UK, has come up with very, very similar studies. However, the figures tend to vary as to how common it is. But as I said, in this article written by Warrior and others, it tends to be, depending on database, it tends to be 3 to 6 times bigger. Now, basically, on Warrior et al. Senior researcher, based on this from Warrior et al., a senior researcher, Jeroen de Winter from Tilburg University in the Netherlands, also sees it best for clinicians and educators to talk about gender identity with their autistic clients and patients, and this he is right, because there have been incidents with which this Mr. De Winter talked about in broader context, is that he had heard stories of autistic people being told by a therapist or a doctor that will cure we will cure your autism, then we'll have a look what your gender is and what we can do about your gender dysphoria. Nearly, and based on a study by Strang, JF et al. In Journal of Autism, Dev Dysord, page 48 from 2018. I will provide all, if you have questions, you want to see more of these sources that I've been using, please just let me know in the chat, and I'll edit the description box down below after the stream to provide more links if you wish. So anyway, in this journal, Strong, JF et al. Said that nearly 70% of autistic gender diverse autistic adolescents say they need medical care to this gender dysphoria, and this is according to a small study in 2018, and 32% say their gender identity have been questioned due to their autism diagnosis, which is kind of horrible if you really think about it. It's such profound parts of your very being is being questioned because these people who call themselves medical professionals do not understand the implications this could, if untreated, could have huge implications on the health of this young autistic person. And it's kind of sad, really, to think that these people think they have to be cured of autism, which cannot be cured. That should be something that a medical we should have a medical consensus, as well as in the field of psychology we should have the consensus of the fact that autism cannot be cured. It can, the symptom or the behavior, it can be managed, if you can say so, but it cannot be cured. No way. Here we have the all the data sets the Warrior and others used in their analysis of the, when they looked into the connection between autism spectrum and gender dysphoria and gender identity. So basically they have, from a, I would assume this is British Channel 4 where they got this, where they had 514,100 people who took part in this study. Now, and then from Musical Universe, where they had also had data sets of 85,500 lifelines, Image magazine, as I understand it, and they had different studies, had different data, and which then had different, which were then combined, and the results were, I'll bear you the details, but it was quite clear the final percentages, which they will come to towards the end of the article, which is interesting to say the least. And they also have quite interesting graphs here as well. I'll bring it up for you, and they also have these different. Here you can see where it's quite clearly is it shows a difference between cisgender person on average, and the differences in the results of cis male and female. But it's, and they go on to talk about the trait in more further detail, to talk about the traits, specific traits of autism, as to where they lead and what they say, or the individual traits. And they made distinction between cis females, cis males, and transgender and gender diverse people, which is quite interesting to say the least. And the results are also really interesting. There are these graphs where you can see that non-autistic cis people and non-autistic trans and gender diverse individuals can be seen with distinct differences in these different parts of this, in different figures of this study, or the study of the material, which is it took me quite a while to read to go through all this, but it was really interesting. I highly suggest these links can be found in the description box down below on YouTube, and should be also available on Facebook. Now, they also took into consideration the other when they got those results I showed you, they then went on to look into whether or not the 6 other neurodevelopmental and psychiatric disorders I mentioned, ADHD, bipolar, depression, learning disorder, OCD and schizophrenia, whether they differed by gender in the dataset C4 when I flashed onto you earlier there, and those results came back in different studies. They varied a little bit, whether depending on the study. But as I understand it, these there was no strong correlation in what they had between gender dysphoria and ASD. And so the other study or review I came across that I want to share with you was found in the public archives of National Library of Medicine. It's also linked in the description box down below. These both links, but I have the PDF file, but now I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll show you the abstract. The Gender Dysphoria and Autism Spectrum Disorder, a narrative review. There, as I said, there's a link, and if you want a PDF file of this, you can either click the link and go and get it yourself, or you can, if you want, I can also send it to you by email. My channel email will also be found down in the description box on YouTube, and on Facebook it should be on top. Now, the abstract is telling. The current literature shows growing evidence of a link between gender dysphoria and autism spectrum disorder. This is what we already saw in this previous study, which is quite lengthy. Also, let's go back. This is done by Anna van der Miesen and colleagues, and I believe they are she is at least from the Netherlands. But this study, they are now the abstract now is as follows. Excuse me. It was a systematic search of literature using this PubMed, from which this can be found. Web of Science and PsycInfo and Scopus, and this was utilizing combinations of following search terms. You can go check this yourself also, should you so wish. So, search terms: autism, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, Asperger's disorder, comorbidity, gender dysphoria, gender identity, genderism, and transsexualism. I should also note that transsexualism is not, it's an outdated term and should not be used in politically correct discussion, as well as transgenderism, because those are not isms, hence they're outdated and can be considered offensive. In total, the 25 articles and report from those results, they picked up 25 articles and reports, and discussed in their text. Now, they gender dysphoria in this research that done by Van der Miesen, Hurley, and De Vries found that autism spectrum and gender dysphoria often co-occur, and sometimes with atypical presentation of gender dysphoria. Random dude, what is ASD? ASD is autism spectrum disorder, which also includes Asperger's syndrome. And I'm covering the connection between gender dysphoria and autism spectrum. There is a overrepresentation of autism spectrum people with autism spectrum among those who have gender dysphoria than non-autistic. There is 3 to 6 times more likely for a neuroatypical or an Asperger's autistic person to have gender dysphoria, which is quite a lot in my opinion for that to be. Typically, the studies, when this has been studied prior to this 2020 big huge study, the studies have typically been just a modest few hundred, but so they might not exactly correctly estimate the odds or the odd ratios of how probable it is. But however, large samples like this article, the study from Warrior and others, is 640,000 people, or the sample size is huge, but with big samples, such bias is minimized, but it will likely exist anyway. Being the odd ratio being biased away from zero in small study people in the study. And there has been also studies regarding the rates of mental health conditions with autism spectrum and gender diverse people. And two recent reviews identify higher rates of mental illness, or psychiatric morbidity, such as depression, anxiety, etc., and substance abuse in transgender and gender diverse people versus cis people. And these using these 5 sets of big data sets, it was the biggest, but the biggest of the 5 was the was it channel 4? Yes. And using those, they investigated whether transgender and gender diverse people versus cis people have elevated rates of autism, elevated autistic traits of systemizing traits, sensory hypersensitivity, and reduced empathy traits, and whether or not they had elevated rates of any of the 6 neurodevelopmental and psychiatric issues I mentioned previously. And they do there is correlation, but as I understand from their final findings, really, is that there is correlation, but it's not as big as they thought eventually to begin with. Now I'll get the comment from random dude. It's possible that autism spectrum disorder affects psychosexual development, which maybe causes sexual dysphoria. Sexual dysphoria is very different from gender dysphoria, because in this context we would typically talk of sexual dysphoria. I haven't heard the term before, sexual dysphoria, but that would refer to a more of an issue with sexual things, like what you do in your bedroom and with whom. But it's gender dysphoria we're talking about here now, which has to do with whether or not your gender identity differs from what you've been assigned at birth. So it's a bit different. Well, quite a bit different, and I'm not quite sure what you mean by sexual dysphoria. But yes, as I understand it, there is evidence of autism spectrum affecting psychosexual development. That is true, as I understand it, from my previous studies. I'm a nurse and I work with disabled people. Right now, I work with adults, severely disabled adults. But previously, I've worked with autists, and I have someone close to me who is autistic also. So I've delved into that world, and it's an interesting one. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about this on my first ever episode of Facts Friday. This Facts Friday will be a thing in the future, and my streaming schedules will be Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. UK time. That is 11 p.m. Eastern European time. So from now on, my streaming will be more regular, and now I've updated. There is now information regarding my streaming schedule and many other. There are links to the season 1 playlist I had with many people, many wonderful people. Right now, I will be wrapping up in 15 to 20 minutes. So please send me questions now, or questions, comments about tonight's topic, as well as the future of this channel. The Monday streams will be Monday news, which will consist of what I've had with Arthur Weber, and then my most recent guest Susanna, and then previously with Trans Atheist, with news articles regarding LGBT plus news in both Finland, Europe, the Americas, Africa and Asia, Oceania, all around the globe. I'll pick up news, and I will have guests. I will also have guests and to cover topics on Friday Facts, as well as the Monday news, and the stream and the topic will be published the previous day. Hopefully, I aim at publishing the stream the previous evening by midnight the previous day, or the previous night, so that you have time, you lovely viewers have time to spread the link and make the time for coming in and watching my stream. And hopefully I will get some of you lovely people on my Discord servers. There are links in the description box in YouTube. Links to the Discord servers. I run 2 Discord servers. One is Hades Corner, called this this channel's name, Heidi's Corner, which is for this channel, stuff about this channel, etc., etc., and to interact with me and other people on the server who are interested in what I do here on YouTube. And then I have LGBT plus safe space server. That server is, as the name says it, aimed to be a safe space for all LGBT plus people to come in and join the discussion in a very safe manner. My moderators and admins on both servers are wonderful people, and they, along with myself, will make your server membership very safe and cozy. We have people talking about art, we have all sorts of things, art, photos, etc., etc., people talking about them, and it's really, really wonderful place. Do you have more questions regarding this topic? I will be leaving, and if you have any questions that arise later on, please send me an email, and please join the Discord servers. Send me an email. I'll just wait for a few moments if we can get some comments or questions you might have on this subject. Okay. I'm not getting anything, so if this is now it, and I will be going, please check the description box down below for the links to the studies, my Discord, the playlists to season 1 and 2, the News Mondays will be the Monday news will continue as the season going forward. News Mondays is season 2 for now, and these Fact Fridays will be on their separate playlist. I have linked in the description box down below, and I hope you will have a great weekend, and please stay safe, stay home, love.